At Tesla's Q2 earnings call, Elon Musk made a number of comments clarifying his thoughts on Tesla's Robotaxi program, from why he delayed the Robotaxi event to October 10th, to what he has in mind as to how Robotaxi will be rolled out. What important design change did he request to the front? And what are the two other things he said they'd now be able to show off? Today, we have Tesla Uber bull Warren Redlich joining us. Warren is a longtime Tesla investor, well known in the community. He has a YouTube channel called Warren Redlich and is one of the few people that Elon Musk himself follows on X. Welcome, Warren. Always enjoy when you join me.
Thanks for having me. Still scratching my head while you followed me, but I'm not complaining.
You're scratching your head while you followed you, but yeah. Well, during the time that he's followed you, just last 3 weeks or something, a couple big things happened. Let's get started with that right off the bat, because you are right in the middle of it all. So he said this, requested what I think is an important design change to the front, and extra time allows us to show off a few other things. He said that because you posted this. What's really going on with the Tesla Robotaxi event on August 8th? This is before this decision to change it. Did Elon Musk suggest a massive engineering change that left Tesla engineers speechless? Of course, you're joking there. Yes. Is the event delayed? Not yet. We don't know yet. Then he replied, and he was the first time he confirmed that it is delayed because of these two reasons. So just tell us a little bit more about how you knew ahead of time that this was about to happen.
Well, so first of all, there was a leak that was published in Bloomberg, whatever. Dana, I hate Elon Hall, okay. Published a story based on leaks that was very, very tilted again as a negative story. It wasn't reported as Tesla's made really important progress with the Robotaxi vehicle, and because of some significant changes, they've decided to delay the event so they can make these massive improvements. It was Tesla's Robotaxi's in trouble, right? Tesla's in trouble because of this thing. And, those of us who follow Tesla know like a 2-month delay on something like this is trivial. So following that, I got angry at people spreading a negative story, uncritically spreading a negative story. Like if you're going to discuss it, if there's a negative story out there, my view, and look, I'm Mr. Warren with my version of morality, and you don't have to agree with my version of morality. But if you are pro Elon and pro Tesla, and there's a negative story about Tesla, and you're an influencer and people follow you, I think you should be offering added value by explaining what you think about the story, not just sharing the story and saying, hey, Elon, is this true? You're not adding value when you do that. Elon knows the story's out there. If he wants to respond to it, he can, but we can offer critical thinking. We can apply our analysis and say, the way she's telling the story, she's made this negative, and we don't know how reliable this is. And I think that's important. So anyway, after she published the story and after a bunch of Tesla influencers spread the story, and then I criticized the story, then we had a whole bunch of conversations that went on Spaces. And so I combined some of what I heard on Spaces and some of what the story was with, people reaching out to me and saying, hey, Warren, here's what's really going on. And I put it all together. If you actually look at what I said, I didn't say, there's a couple things that I added that weren't already out there. But I think the critical thing is the speechless thing is not a joke. Oh. And if you watch Gwynne Shotwell talk about these engineering meetings with Elon, there are these moments when Elon says, well, what if we did this? And not just Gwynne. I think it's Jim Keller or Garrett Reisman. There are people, when people talk about, Elon drops an idea, and Gwynne described this really well in a recent interview. She's like, your initial reaction is to say, we can't do that. And she's, the people who worked with Elon a long time have learned, okay, don't say that. So you got to sit back and think. And she'll literally, I think she literally sat back and said, you have to sit back and you have to think about it before you respond. And that's the speechless I'm referring to, is that Elon dropped something in this meeting. And I don't know. I don't have, nobody said this is what it was, right? But my sense is it's not like a cosmetic change to the front of the vehicle, because that wouldn't take time to re-engineer.
Exactly.
Right? It's something about how they manufacture the front of the vehicle that will reduce cost of goods sold, will improve manufacturing velocity, that kind of thing. I'm not saying I know what it is, but I think it's that sort of thing that makes the vehicle probably more on the manufacturing side than the consumer end side, or if there is such a thing as a consumer end side. If it's a robotaxi, we don't really buy them. They provide rides. We buy rides. And I don't know how much the rider is going to notice this change. So the fact that the engineers were taken aback by the suggestion was something that was not discussed. And the fact that this is the two things that I got from sources that weren't out there is how excited the team is about the product. I don't think people realize did you go to Cyber Rodeo?
Yes.
So I walked around Cyber Rodeo, and there's all these Tesla engineers at different stations. Here's our battery cell manufacturer. And I'm talking to the battery engineers, and I'm talking to these engineers over here, and I'm talking to like regular staff who aren't engineers. And I would ask, I made it a point to ask everyone I talked to, what are you excited about for the future? And half of the answers were Cybertruck. And a lot of those answers came from engineers in the company who knew a lot more about Cybertruck than we did. So they know, I think Tesla delivered an incredibly exciting product.
They did.
And there's people out there are like, oh, Cybertruck's a bust, whatever, blah. I'm like, I don't know what you're looking at. I'm looking at Kim Kardashian and, a whole bunch of celebrities riding around and thing. I'm looking at it actually is bulletproof. I'm like, bulletproof to handgun rounds, just to be clear, not bulletproof to, center fire rifle rounds, but bulletproof to handgun rounds. The four-wheel steering, the 48 volt, the drive-by-wire, there's a lot of stuff in there we didn't know was coming. And it's the Haggerty interview. So anyway, take that excitement that the engineers had at the time when they knew when they had some idea what was coming, right? I think a lot more was added since then. Take that excitement and then apply that to, we've got a vehicle that's not going to be exciting to drive. It's like, this is a radical innovation in the global transportation network. Like, if your objective is, I want to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, and you realize the way we're going to do that is we're going to provide, so we've got the self-driving part coming. Now we've got to provide the platform, the hardware platform that makes that self-driving delivered at low cost, so that we can sell it at a price that is dramatically better, and we can get people who are currently driving gas cars to say, you know what, it's cheaper for me to ride in a robotaxi than it is to drive my own gas car. That changes everything. Okay, so if you are working on a team that is striving for that goal, and now you see this manufacturing, this platform that's going to deliver those rides, so the team is very excited about this is something like, Dana Hall didn't say this. So, I have a question, which is like, okay, it's obvious that she had a legit leak. Now, my question is, did her leaks tell her about how exciting this thing is? Did her leaks tell her more detail about what the manufacturing change was and why it was happening? Does she know more on the good news side of things and didn't say it?
She chose not to. Yeah, that's more likely.
My guess is that, so there's, most likely her sources are disgruntled employees, right? Who are giving her negative spin. Did she ask, hey, what do you think of this vehicle? Is it going to be special? Did she ask those questions? Probably. I think she didn't even ask the questions. I think she's got a few, look, there's 100,000 employees at Tesla. There's probably more than 1,000 who are working on the robotaxi vehicle, right? So you're going to have a few people who are disgruntled, who are going to secretly leak stuff, right? But, if you're an objective reporter, you're going to say, well, why is this important? Why is he making this change? What's the big deal? And if you don't ask the question, because the article was really short. I actually didn't read the article when it first broke. I went back and read it later, you remove paywall so I could read the article, because I don't want to give Bloomberg any money and whatever. It was really a short article. Like, that's journalism? That's all you got? You got a clickbait headline and you got, I don't know, two or three short paragraphs of text with, ads in the, ads all over the page. Like, that's not journalism. So, I was fortunate that somebody reached out to me. A couple of people reached out to me, and I communicated with them, and I got a little bit more. And I could tell they didn't want to say more, right? They didn't want to reveal too much. And I revealed a little bit more than was revealed. And then Elon responded, which was like, it's so comical that higher profile accounts said, "Hey, Elon, is this true?" And he ignored them. And then I don't ask him. Like, I didn't ask for Sawyer and Omar to be reinstated, to be refollowed. I was making fun of the situation, but okay, he responded.
Let's get to this. So the important design change to the front and extra time allows us to show off a few other things. This is July 15th. And then just a few days ago at the earnings call, this is what he said.
The sort of Robotaxi, or the sort of product unveil by a couple months where it's shifted to 1010. And this is because I wanted to make some important changes that I think would improve the sort of the Robotaxi, the main thing that we're going to show, and we're also going to show off a couple of other things. So moving back a few months allowed us to improve the Robotaxi, as well as add in a couple other things for the product unveil.
The next question is about timing of Robotaxi event, which we've already covered.
Okay, let's pause that. So he said, improve the Robotaxi design. What was your interpretation of what that might mean?
Well, like I said, I think that what's important about the Robotaxi is not 0 to 60 times, and not necessarily charging at 350 kilowatts or range anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. Those things aren't really important for a Robotaxi. The important thing for a Robotaxi is driving down cost. The more you drive down cost, you want it to be safe, you want it to be efficient, and efficiency is part of the cost. So if you think about it, if it's going to cost, let's say, $15,000 to manufacture the vehicle, and the vehicle is going to last 1 million miles, then that's 1.5 cents a mile, right? So if you can drive it down to $12,000 or $14,000, right? Every little bit you save, and this is one of those things, every little bit you save, you're lowering that cost, and that allows you to price the ride less when you're pricing rides. So if you can get a little bit extra efficiency, so instead of 6 miles a kilowatt hour, you're getting 6.5, then you're lowering the price of a ride. And the objective is to deliver rides safely, efficiently, et cetera, safely, conveniently, whatever. But the more you lower the price of that ride. And this is one of the things, like you've spent a lot of time in the Philippines. I've spent a lot of time in Thailand, Malaysia. There are countries where 25 cents a mile is not going to cut it. Mm-hmm. You're not going to change the world to 25 cents a mile. Mm-hmm. So you need to get your ride price down, and getting to 25 cents a mile is going to be hard, right? But you're really going to need to get to 20 cents a mile, 15. Every step you get below that, you get to 20 cents a mile, it's a bigger game changer. You get to 15 cents a mile, it's a bigger game changer. I think Philippines is like Thailand. You walk out, there's a guy on a bike waiting to give you a ride, and he's going to charge you $1 to take you a few kilometers, mm-hmm. right? And not safe, but that's what you got to compete with, is these cheap alternatives to transportation that aren't safe and aren't efficient and aren't environmentally friendly. So can we beat that?
I actually disagree that. I've been saying this for a while. I don't think that the Robotaxi is going to be optimized for cost. I think it's going to be optimized for experience. I think that when you have a very expensive cost of a car, it will be amortized over the million miles. Even ARK Invest themselves says that you can't look at other companies like with the LiDAR base and say, oh, they're so expensive. It actually washes out over the rides, over miles. And you can charge more money when you're inside the beautiful experience. You can say, oh, you want music? Pay another extra. They'll eat up the extra cents in a mile. So you're thinking that the design in the front, he did say important design change. And so I agree with you that it's not going to be just for design purpose, not cosmetic. And so you're thinking it's to reduce costs. A viewer sent me this note, and I thought it made sense. He said that he thinks it's going to be not wireless, but charging in the front, so that it can go and park and then basically connecting it, charging. And to me, that made a lot of sense. And that
I think it's going to use inductive charging. So I think
that might be too slow. But yeah, okay.
Well,
but even
if you think that the vehicle is going, my thesis on the Robotaxi world is, in the short to medium term, Robotaxis will operate from 6 a.m. to midnight, mm-hmm. and they'll charge from midnight to 6 a.m.
Gotcha.
So they won't need to I think that they're going to be able to get wireless charging up to somewhere over 100 kilowatts and maybe even 250 kilowatts. So I think that'll be a stretch. But 100 kilowatts won't be that much of a stretch for Tesla engineers. So If most of the charging is done at night when there's no rides, then if it takes a little longer to charge, it's not a big deal.
Gotcha.
But I want to push back on the point about cost. So I ride Uber. I ride Grab here in Thailand. You have the option to pay for more expensive rides. You can pay for Uber SUV or Grab SUV or luxury, whatever. And I would say probably 90+% of people who are choosing rides on Uber are choosing the cheap option.
Agreed. Yeah.
So you need it. It needs to be good enough, right? It needs to be comfortable. It needs to be, but at the same time, like, look, I'm at the airport. I want to get home. I don't want to pay more for that ride. Right now it's $50 to get from JFK to, my place in Brooklyn or something like that. Right. And you're going to deliver me that ride for $10. The ride in the taxi isn't that good anyway. Like, have you been in a New York City taxi? A lot of the options that we have now for transportation. And if you think about it beyond the United States, right? If you go beyond the United States, I'm not saying they don't want to make it a good experience. And I think they have ways of making good experience. But if you look at, honestly, I think my Grab is the equivalent of Uber here in Thailand. I think my Grab rides in general have been nicer than my Uber rides in America in terms of the quality of the interior of the vehicle. They're smaller. They're usually like Corolla sized. But the vehicles are in better condition than the Ubers I ride in America. But so anyway, the point is that, I'll get an Uber ride in America. It'll be some crappy Toyota Corolla or Toyota Camry that's been, 10 years old, and it's okay, but it's not crisp. So I think that the vast majority of consumers, like, if your goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, not accelerate middle-class people having comfortable rides.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Look, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and you're not going to reach all of them. But if you want to go beyond 100 million people in the United States, and the United States, Europe, the wealthy countries, if you want to go beyond 100 million people, there's 7.9 billion more people out there that you've got to reach. And you've got to deliver a low-cost ride in order to get probably 95 to 98% of the global population on board. Then there's easily a 20% that won't be able to ride in it no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Right. There's 20% of the global population that can't afford it no matter what. But easily 50% of the world's population, if you deliver a ride cheap enough, they'll take it.
Right. Price is important. I absolutely agree with you. So then he also said that there's going to be, in this, you pointed out that the first time he said it in reply to your tweet, he said a few other things. Now he said two other things, a couple other things. What do you think those two are?
I think one of them clearly has to be Optimus production version 1. And the reason for that, I think the other thing could be a van, or, a van would not Osborne anything. Right? If they announced it, and I don't mean like a minivan that might Osborne Model Y. Right. I mean, a van, like a commercial van. I think there's a huge market for that, and Tesla doesn't have anything in that market. So that would be a smart one. But the one that seems most obvious to me is Optimus. In the call, he talked about that next year, they expect thousands of Optimus working in Tesla factories.
Right.
Okay. And then the year after that, late 2025, sometime in 2026, they expect to start shipping Optimus to customers in high volume production of production version 2. Wait a minute. I don't remember hearing anything about any production version at all. So if you're going to have thousands of Optimus working in the factories next year, then that's probably production version 1. So I think they're going to show us production version 1 on October 10th of Optimus.
They could, for a couple of reasons. One is he did call it V1 at the earnings call. And then he did say earlier, but a couple months ago, he said that we're going to do a major hardware revision on the bot, and it should be ready by the end of this year, and it's partly the hands and others. And so if it's the end of this year, if they push this now to October, maybe they have the ability to actually show something associated with that. That could be a couple things. Yeah. I know that a lot of people said the same thing, which is one of those couple things could be a vehicle.
It's the Optimus accessory store.
I can't believe that question made it in the earnings call. What are the accessories for Optimus? It's crazy. Crazy what people are thinking. I don't know why I got voted. It's silly. Okay. But what are the couple other things? A few people said it's going to be a car or vehicle. And I'm like, no, I don't see why that could be. It's going to be a couple other things regarding the Robotaxi event. This should be Robotaxi event. So maybe Grok and other
Well, I mean,
demonstrations.
it could be the software. They've hinted at the software, like the app for your phone.
Yeah.
And there was actually a question on the call, and like I feel like Elon was a little tone deaf on this one. I think it was Pierre Farragut was asking.
Yeah, I got it.
Was it Pierre Farragut was asking the question about how's this going to work?
Yeah.
And I feel like Elon's kind of like, we'll just open it up on the app and it'll just work. And like, I think there has to be something more, right? You know, there has to be a feature in the app for me to submit my car to the network. There has to be a feature in the app for me to request a ride. How when I submit my car to the network, what happens? If Tesla's going to have its own fleet, how is Tesla going to operate its own fleet? There's a lot of operational questions that that probably should be answered. And I think Elon just sort of like, oh, that'll be easy. Is he really thinking it'll be that easy, or have they already solved the issues? Because they've had teams talking about this stuff for years, right? Just like they've got teams talking about what's a Mars colony going to be like, how are we going to get, how are we going to make the Mars colony work? 10 years before they're actually going to start building the Mars colony. So they've been planning this for a long time, but he just sort of like washed over it like it's no big deal. Like, I think it's a big deal.
What Pierre was asking, and I do have the clip here if you want to hear it, but he was saying, he was saying was scale. Yeah. How do you roll this out? Because normally you need to have lots of Uber riders or drivers in a certain city before, when people will decide to choose Uber and whenever they happen to be in that city. And he said, I don't get it, because we're just going to turn it all on and we got 7 million cars and it's going to be instant scale. He didn't answer the question, will they roll it out city by city? That's what they were trying to get to. But
well, the question was sort of answered by, I want to say it was Lars, but I'm not sure whose voice it was, that federal regulation is by NHTSA.
Yep.
And then state and local regulation applies. So obviously they're going to have to get approval to operate in different places. But I think the question of how do you get scale when you open operation somebody, I did a poll. I don't know if you saw my poll on this. No. If you own a Tesla, and Tesla network opens and you submit your vehicle to operate, let's say 6 hours a day, and you're going to make $70,000 a year from that 6 hours a day, once you put your vehicle in the network. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think that's unreasonable. I would probably put my vehicle in the network 18 hours a day and not ride it anymore. I would just request a Robotaxi ride when I needed a ride. I don't know why I would bother using my own vehicle anymore.
Exactly.
But I think maybe $50,000 a year instead of $70,000 a year more reasonable. But 6 hours a day, peak hours, I think you're going to make a lot of money on this in the short term. In the medium term, prices will start to fall. The revenue per hour will fall a bit. But something like, it was more than 2/3 of the Tesla owners said yes. So if you have, and California is probably going to be first, right? I want to say that Florida and Texas and Nevada will be early, but California already has established Robotaxi networks operating, so it's pretty straightforward to say we want to run a Robotaxi network. We'll follow the same path as Waymo and Cruise. So the regulatory system is laid out. You just follow that regulatory network. California has the highest density of Teslas anywhere in the world. Yeah. So if half of Tesla owners in California put their vehicles in the fleet, problem solved. And I think people don't realize, like, there aren't that many Ubers. Right. I think there's more Teslas than there are Ubers.
Yeah. James Thalman said you only need 100,000 in Chicago, city of Chicago.
Well, it depends what your price is. If you're selling, Uber right now is $2.50 to $3 a mile. If you start selling rides at $2 a mile, so you're undercutting Uber, you're going to get all the Uber rides. Yeah. Right. Almost everyone who's riding Uber is going to switch. I mean, there'll be some holdovers. I don't trust a vehicle without a human driver. There'll be, but you'll get a lot of the Uber riders pretty quickly. But you're not going to get people to stop driving their own car and not buy a car because they can ride in Robotaxi. You've got to lower the price. And so what I see happening is, it really depends on the price point. When you drop the price to 50 cents a mile, well, you need a hell of a lot of vehicles, right? Because the average American pays 70 cents a mile to own their own car. Well, if you drop the price to 50 cents a mile, then a large swath of America says, I'm not going to bother owning a car anymore. And now you need to service 300 million people. Well, now you need a lot of robotaxis. But if you're just getting the Uber traffic, and maybe a few people are switching to ride onto a robotaxi instead of riding on a subway or a bus, right? You'll pick up a few of those. Then 7 million vehicles is enough early on. And California has such a high saturation of Teslas that there'll be plenty. And then the interesting question to me is, what's your pricing model? And how do you communicate with customers, hey, put your vehicle in the fleet now, we're paying higher rates now, right? I think there's some challenges there. And my guess is that Tesla has thought that through, because, you have surge pricing for Uber. Right. And if you're an Uber driver, you'll get a notice, hey, the prices are up right now, and you'll go out and drive more. Right. And that's how they address the demand and supply issues. So they'll have a pretty good idea fairly early when demand is high, and you'll know. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. Yeah.
I've been saying, I think the first city could be LA, Los Angeles. I was just there, and it's the worst place to drive around. It's and there's not enough taxis. Ubers cost ridiculous amount of money because you're always, every trip is an hour long, no matter how short the miles is. It's LA, right? Yeah. So let's get back to you as an investor. You are a long-term bull. We've had you on the show several times now, and you've stuck to your guns. This is, you look at 5-10 years of forward. You don't look at the quarterlies. What's your reaction to what you've been hearing, where we're at today, and what happened at the earnings call?
Yeah, the earnings call was one of the best earnings calls we've ever had. If you're worried about quarterly numbers, then the earnings per share was a little lower or something like that. And I honestly, I don't think the prospects for earnings per share in Q3 were that much better than Q2. I think I did hear some hints of good things that are coming. We're going to lose the restructuring charge, won't be in Q3, and some cost of goods sold are declining. Ramp of Model 3 and Cybertruck are going, so that's good. But the progress on FSD is huge. The progress on Optimus is huge. The progress on building out these AI supercomputer clusters is huge. I think you have to ask yourself, why am I investing in Tesla? Am I investing in Tesla because I think they're going to sell more cars than anybody else, and they're going to make high profits on their cars because, they'll sell the cars at this price and it'll cost them this much to manufacture? I mean, I think those things are true, but I don't think those things are going to drive the valuations I'm looking for. But Robotaxi is going to drive those valuations. And, Elon's answer to Pierre Ferragu, while I didn't love the answer, I think his point about scale, like I did my poll, like I hear so many people saying, I'm not putting my vehicle on the Robotaxi network. I don't want people in my car. Like, well, wait a minute. You paid $40,000 for the car. If you're going to make $70,000 a year putting the car on the network, why haven't you already bought another car? Right? Just buy another car.
And there's actually a patent. Have you seen the patent about the automatic cleaning? So it's a whole incredibly long patent about how Tesla is going to do
a lot
cleaning.
of stuff. And if you follow Kimball Musk, he has a startup that does growing vegetables in shipping containers. Yeah. And they have a feature called Mojave mode, where they've got some sort of pest or some kind of problem, and they just turn up the heat to like 120 degrees and dry all the air out, and it kills off the pests. Wow. And I'm like, they'll just put Mojave mode in the car, right? Close the windows, turn the heat up to max.
Exactly. That is what they do. Yeah, they shine the sunlight, and you can move the screen as a mirror to hit every part of the car.
Yeah, but you can also turn up the heat. You can actually make the car hot. Make the car 140 degrees for a few minutes. You make the car hot enough for a short enough time span, like 30 minutes or something like that. That'll clean the car out. Yeah. So there's a lot of well, how will the car be? What happens if somebody leaves the car dirty and I get in the car next? Well, then you take a photo, and I think it's built into the app. Right. You take a photo of the interior of the car as you get in. You take a photo of the interior car as you get out, right in the app. Yeah. And then if the car comes to pick you up, and there's vomit on the floor, you take a photo and say, send me another ride, and the previous rider gets billed.
There's already internal camera, but yes.
No, but I'm saying, like, the internal camera can't cover everything, but you could just build that right into the app. So that if, the smart thing to do is, as you get in the car, take a picture, built into the app, right? Get out of the car, take a picture, and it goes right to your camera library too.
Yeah.
And then if a car arrives and there's something wrong with the interior of the car, there's a pile of poop or vomit or whatever, you dog hair, whatever it is, spilled drink, you take a photo, say, send me a new ride. They send you a new ride. The new ride comes in 5 minutes. The previous driver gets billed for the cleanup.
All right. So we were talking about your investment thesis and how you're feeling. Like you said, okay, all that's great, but what matters is FSD. Of course, you're also a big bot believer, but so you're in FSD. You really do believe the 12.5, 12.6, 12.7. The progress is heading that direction, and it's coming to fruition. Tell me more about what you're forecasting and what you're thinking about that.
It goes back to the Andre Karpathy saying, all you need is more data, more compute. Yeah. And you need the right model and more data, more compute. And the more complex your model, so they've gone 5x the parameters in 12.5, which makes a bigger model. And so you're getting much better models. You're getting much more data. There was a chart in the earnings slide deck where they showed miles on V12.
Yeah, I got that.
And miles on V12 was a lot in a short time, compared to all the miles that have been accumulated before. So they're generating a massive amount of data. They're building a massive amount of compute. And then I think one of the things that really stands out to me, I mentioned Gwynne Shotwell before and how she responded to, when Elon has an engineering suggestion. And one of my things about understanding Elon companies, not just Tesla, but also SpaceX, Neuralink, whatever it is, it's one thing when Elon says we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then nobody else on the team says it.
Yes.
Okay, Elon's being overly optimistic. We can kind of chill. Like, hopefully that'll happen in 5 or 10 years, right? When the rest of the team is on board, so Phil Duan is one of the AI engineers, and he posted about it. And there's another, I can't remember the guy's name, another AI engineer posted about it. And Ashok has been posting about it. Mm-hmm. So the AI team, the Tesla autonomy team, the Robotaxi team, or AI, FSD team, has been posting about how excited they are about the progress. If they're excited about the progress, that's a really good sign. So yeah, I think that's the thing that, and look, my attitude as a 2030 plus investor, like, I don't care if they deliver Robotaxi in 2025, 2026, or 2027, right? As long as they deliver it before 2030, and really, I'm kind of out to 2032 now. Once they deliver it, if you see the business model for Robotaxi, it's just game over.
Yeah.
And same thing with Optimus. If once you see the business model for Optimus, it's like, well, whether they have Optimus selling to customers in 2026, 27, 28, doesn't really matter. Once they're shipping Optimus in volume, I actually have a friend who's talking about the value that it generates for Tesla having Optimus operating in the factories once it's effective.
Yeah.
Like how much does it save them on labor costs?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it's material, apparently. 2,000 bots is material. And I just want to dive a little deeper into that, but apparently it is.
And if you think about it, like the typical worker in a Tesla Gigafactory, it's probably in Texas and California, I'm leaving out, and probably Berlin. Leave out China because China factory workers are probably cheaper. Both the workers, the wages and the benefits and other things that go along, workers' comp insurance and stuff like that are probably cheaper. But in Texas, it's somebody said it was like $80 an hour, actual cost to Tesla per worker. Yep. And in California, it's probably more than 100, right? So if Optimus can come in and be half as efficient as a human.
Even if they're half as efficient, it's still worth it, yeah.
If you have 2 Optimuses replace 1 human, and then you replace 1,000 workers, and you just saved, $80,000 an hour, for and then you have thousands of robots working in your factories. And there's 2 things there. One is maybe you're reducing labor costs. 2 is maybe you're increasing productivity. Don't forget that it's not always, you may be able to redeploy your workers to work on something else and make your workers more productive so you can produce more product at lower cost. Like it doesn't have to be that robots replace human labor. It could be that robots actually increase human labor.
Yes. Because
you get so efficient that the same number of workers can get 5 times as much work done. So, and then you can lower the cost and there's more demand because you've lowered the cost. There's a virtuous cycle there.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm very optimistic about Optimus. I'm very optimistic about Robotaxi. I'm excited. I don't have the business model yet for the AI training and AI inference supercomputer clusters once Optimus and the cars are solved. They're never really solved. They'll always continue to improve. But like, what's the value in that? What's the business model in that? I don't know the answer to that question. Tesla Energy. I thought the news on Tesla Energy was better than expected.
Yes.
Storage deployed, I thought was all Megapack, and apparently there was a Powerwall record. They had record deployment of Powerwall. Powerwall 3 is apparently a high demand. We knew there were significant improvements to Powerwall 3. So, and margin on Tesla Energy was the same, 25% gross margin. But because it was more than double previous, I think it was roughly double previous revenue. So it was like roughly double. So the contribution to gross profit was really large from Tesla Energy. And Vaibhav said there will be quarters with large increases and there will be quarters where it falls back. My guess is next Q3 will be a fallback quarter.
Could be.
He didn't say there will be quarters with large fallback. I don't remember his word. I don't think he said fallback, reduction or whatever. We had 9 point something gigawatt hours this quarter. Maybe we'll be 8 gigawatt hours next quarter, right? 8 gigawatt hours next quarter. But then, and there's another thing Elon said. So the Shanghai Megafactory is coming online.
On schedule.
And he said it will double or maybe triple output.
That's right. I know.
Wait.
He's triple all of a sudden.
But the Shanghai Gigafactory is twice as productive as the other factories. So, and I actually wonder, like, they haven't said it yet. They have to be planning the next mega factories, like more than one.
For sure.
I think there has to be at least one more mega factory in the US, probably at least one more in China. India would be my guess. Where else do you need the value? So the reason why the US is because of the AI data centers are concentrated in the US, and the demand for electricity from AI data centers is huge. So that is growing really, really fast, and they need a lot of electricity. So megapacks to smooth electricity supply to AI data centers. It's an obvious thing, and the volume of that is just going to be huge. China just needs it because China has such a huge economy. I don't know where else would be next, but they have to have 2 or 3 more mega factories getting ready to go because the demand is just insane. And they're because lithium iron phosphate cells are falling in price, their cost of making megapack, and because they're improving manufacturing techniques and they're improving and because they're constantly improving, like the demand for megapack is going to rise because your price point is falling. So I think that the Tesla, leave out. I don't think that my long-term valuation is upheld purely by energy, but Tesla Energy is huge. And if I can make one more point, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're pinning your hopes for Tesla on manufacturing vehicles at large scale, at low costs, to be able to make profits on vehicle sales, you're missing the story about Chinese EVs. And I'm living in a country that is living the story of Chinese EVs. You can buy a BYD Atto 3, which is a pretty damn good EV. Like I'm probably going to buy a Model Y here in a few months, 2-3 months. The BYD Atto 3 is pretty compelling. It's less than half the price of a Model Y. The Model Y I want to buy versus the lowest priced BYD Atto 3 I could buy. But even like the fully optioned out BYD Atto 3 is barely over $25,000. Right? I think you can get one for less than $25,000. BYD Dolphin is not bad, and it's under $20,000 here. So if you just want a city car, so Tesla's not going to win that war. They're not going to outcompete BYD, Chang'an Motors, Great Wall Motors. There's these Chinese manufacturers that are making a high volume of low-cost EVs. You're not going to win that battle. BYD supplies its own batteries, right? In high volume. That's not a war you're going to win. You're going to win based on autonomy, not based on manufacturing low-cost vehicles, because China's really good at manufacturing low-cost vehicles. Teslas are better, no question about it. But if they'll be selling the Atto 3 for under $20,000 here within a couple of years. So if Tesla makes a next generation vehicle that you can buy and it costs $25,000, I'll buy it. But the average Thai person isn't going to spend an extra $5,000. You're not going to win that war. You've got to deliver something else, and that's autonomy.
Yep. And Elon has been saying this quite a few times in different ways, right? He said that really the value of Tesla, he kind of said the value of Tesla is zero if it doesn't get autonomy. That's because at some point, the battle for cars is just going to be going down to the race to the bottom. But if you have autonomy, it doesn't almost matter. All these car companies doing what they do. You've completely changed the game. It's like a car versus a horse.
No, and I would say that there was a question about licensing, and Elon said they would have to be doing 1 million vehicles a year.
Yeah. What'd you think about
There's
that?
only
That's
one
pretty
company,
good.
There's only one
BYD.
company that meets that test. BYD.
Yeah.
And he said it takes legacy auto, it'll take
3
legacy
years.
auto several years to do it. BYD will do it in 6 months.
Yeah.
BYD will make those changes in 6 months. They probably already have the cameras in the cars.
Yeah.
Right? BYD will make that happen. I think Hyundai might be able to pull it off.
It's the one who's second, which is Hyundai, 200, 300,000 today EVs. It's got to be at 1 million. So yeah.
Hyundai will get to 1 million. Volkswagen maybe, but I don't think Volkswagen can be nimble. I think Hyundai can be nimble.
Exactly. It's going to be several Chinese is what we've been saying. We agree with you that it's BYD. It's really cool. I mean, so lots of good things are happening, right? So you're still very much bullish on the FSD, right? So we've got him saying that supervised FSD is going to get regulatory approval for China and Europe and other countries by the end of this year. That will be a demand driver for the current cars. And then he said that unsupervised FSD, which is, Robotaxi ready, could actually happen by the end of this year, but not, maybe not for sure. He'll be shocked if it wasn't next year. Now, he said this a million times, so nobody really takes that seriously.
If you need the billions of miles to persuade regulators, and 12.5 probably isn't it yet. The current version of 12.5 probably isn't. Maybe 12.5.6 will be it. Maybe 12.6 might be it, but if 12.6 rolls out to customers in October, right? October 10th, right?
Right.
All right, we're pushing 12.6 to customers on October 10th. Maybe that's a goal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you accumulate billions of miles on 12.6 by the end of this year.
Right.
I think you accumulate billions of miles on 12.6 by middle of next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough to persuade regulators. And, I'd say it's really interesting. Like, we tend to be very focused on the United States. It matters in China. China's a bigger market. I think the value of the U.S. market is higher than the Chinese market. But, and Europe will be tough. Like, I disagreed with Elon about one thing when he said it would be immoral for regulators to say no.
Mm. There's a lot of regulators who will still say no. Gotcha.
Why would regulators care about morality? I think he's overly optimistic about regulators and how they're going to respond to this.
Yeah.
I do think some will. I mean, I think state of Florida, go. State of Nevada, go. State of Texas, go. Roughly half the United States will be like, go, 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 go. California, even though I don't think the regulators are great, they've already got an established framework. It'll be go. Arizona will be go. Right, so roughly half the United States, the northeastern United States, Illinois, Detroit, Michigan, they'll resist.
Yeah.
They'll resist because it strikes at the heart of that. Number one, they hate Elon, or number two, they are trying to protect big auto. But most of the United States will be on board quickly, and then China will adopt it faster than the United States. China will be like, it's like there's no local regulation, right? The Chinese government says you're in, it's over.
The government has fully supported
the world.
The only thing that's concerning there is that they haven't even tried FSD yet there in China. That's not being used there. So
he did say, we'll seek approval in Europe and China and other countries for FSD supervised for 12.5 or 12.6, likely in 2024.
Yeah, by the end of this year.
Not supervised.
Yeah.
Supervised. So
no,
I think we know they've been working on FSD in China already. And
yes, there's test drivers and all that, but it's not the same amount of driving that we are doing here in the U.S., of course. That's the only thing.
But they
right?
did make progress with China on. I remember there was something where they made progress with China on allowing them to use their cameras because there was an issue about security.
There's 4 regulations that they got passed in China. That again, Chinese government is fully on board. They're fully supporting Tesla. They've met all the requirements where the data is stored, what data they can still share, by the way. They allowed the companies like Tesla to share certain information. Okay, so you're pretty feeling good about FSD. What's the next thing? It sounded like it was bought. You're happy with energy. Anything else that you think is the next big thing?
So, no, those are the big ones. The AI data centers and the value. When Elon talked about the AI5 chips, having billions of AI5 chips in Optimus, and doing AI inference, it's really I haven't come up with a napkin math model for the value of AI inference. I don't know how to value it. You see that Llama's free, right? And Meta just said, here's our latest model, free. Go ahead, have fun. I actually stopped paying for ChatGPT because I use the free version of ChatGPT. It pretty much does what I want. I use Anthropic's Claude. I haven't started using Llama yet, but I probably will. I use Grok. I'm expecting to use more Grok. LLM chatbots are a commodity already. They're basically a zero cost commodity. So I don't understand yet. And I think there are people inside the AI community who see where a profit model is. Yeah. I just don't see it yet. I see the model of embodied AI, right? The value of embodied AI, of humanoid robots or of cars, but you have to manufacture them at scale and they have to be able to operate in the real world. That's why Tesla has this huge advantage. What's the business model for, and I think AI inference has a lot of applications for people who don't understand the concept of AI inference. There's training. I'm oversimplifying this. I've had people tell me my explanation is pretty good. There's training and there's inference. Yep. And I've got two ways of explaining this. Basically, the car is driving on the road. There's an inference chip in the car that's taking in photons, right? And maybe some other inputs, and then outputting go left, go right, go faster, go slower, whatever. There's a training computer. It's collecting all this data. It sends all its data up to a training computer supercluster, and the training computer supercluster looks at everything and says, hey, everything would be a little bit better if we changed the training so it responded this way to the input. Yeah. So the training is one thing, the inference is the other. According to, I think it was James Douma, 95% of AI compute is inference. So inference matters a lot. So another way of thinking about this is you go out and you play tennis. Okay. And when you're playing tennis, it's primarily inference. Yeah. Right. Your body is muscle memory. You're reacting to something. You don't have time to think through it. You have some level of planning of this is how I'm going to play this point. But 95% of what you do playing tennis or playing golf or playing any kind of sport or walking down the street is inference. You're responding to inputs as they come in. You go to sleep at night, and this is my rough interpretation, and your brain is this could have been better. And you're sitting at home and you're thinking about your day, or you go to sleep at night and your brain is retraining how you do things. And so your muscle memory is better the next day. Your muscle, and it's a slow incremental improvement in how you perform certain tasks. And I lift weights, and I think I lift weights better over time because I figure out what hits the muscle, where I'm getting the pump, or the mind muscle connection. But when I'm doing the individual lift and I'm going like this, that's inference compute. And I think that's a pretty good analogy. So has anybody given you a model of how the inference compute generates revenue, and what are the end user applications or the B2B applications that make it make sense? Because I don't see the business model yet.
I did an interview with Brian Wang, and he went through his model of how big this could be. There's also the cars, right? Because it's basically compute that's sitting there not being used. And so what you're selling is compute. Because every car, every bot's going to have a chip in it and compute capability.
No, that's the supply side of it. I get the supply side of it. We're going to have all these computers that are able to do inference compute. All right, now I'm a consumer. How am I using this inference compute? Who is paying for the inference compute? Is it I'm running a business and I need inference compute to do this? Because I don't understand B2B. I only understand B2C because I'm a consumer. I don't run a large corporation. So I don't know how to. So I don't understand.
I don't either. I don't think it's consumers that are renting it like AWS is, where it's consumers and small businesses. This is going to be just the big boys who need more compute. Now you're competitive to NVIDIA data warehouses.
I've never understood Oracle's business model. I've never understood PeopleSoft's business model. I don't understand those models. I'm not saying that they're not valuable. It's just I know what I know. I understand Amazon because I buy products from Amazon.
Yeah,
right?
gotcha.
That's something. It's hard as an investor for me to invest in B2B businesses because I don't understand. Like Palantir, like I don't.
Yeah, that's
What does
one nobody
Palantir
does.
deliver?
They don't tell
There's
you.
all these people raving about Palantir. Like I don't get it. People rave about Lemonade Insurance. I'm
Government.
like, Lemonade
Lemonade.
Insurance is a B2C, and I'm like, okay, but I don't.
No, I got that
I
one.
still don't see the business model for Lemonade, right? So for me, like I see the Robotaxi model. I see the Optimus model. I need something to do something for me. I need my lawn mowed. This is what it's going to cost me now. I need somebody to come clean my house. This is what it's going to cost me now. This is what it's going to cost with a bot. Okay, I can see that, right? I have a project to work on in my backyard. I need somebody to come out here and chop wood or, move hay or whatever the hell it is, right? Dig a trench. Okay, this is what it cost me to hire a human to do it. This is what it cost me to hire an Optimist to do it. I can see that model. I can see the model of like I worked in a Burger King, right? So I can see how if you had a Optimist come in and do some of the work that humans do, and I go from 10 workers to 9, well, I just saved the cost of one worker. Okay. And I even see like roofing. Like I don't know if we've talked about roofing before.
Yeah.
And this is where you go from fewer workers to more workers while saving labor costs. Okay. Which is we've got a crew of 10 guys working on the roof. We put 5 bots up there. Now we only need 5 guys on the roof. And we've lowered our cost of delivering the roofing project so much.
Yeah.
That, and let's say we're putting solar panels on a roof, right? Our job is we're putting solar panels on the roof. We need a crew of 10 guys to do it. Now all of a sudden we need a crew of 5 guys to do it. Now our price of delivering solar panels onto your roof has gone down so much that we've got 5 times as many customers.
Exactly. That's what's happening.
And now we've gone from 10 workers on one roof to 25 workers on 5 roofs.
Exactly. Yep.
And now we've accelerated the transition to sustainable energy. So I see that, but I don't, when you get to inference compute, unless it's embodied, I don't see it.
Okay. So the two are you care about, FSD and bots. So as a long-term investor, it's finally coming, right? I mean, you've been investing for a long time and everybody kept saying, yeah, but I have to wait 100 years for Tesla to finally show some innovation that occurs. Now it's spitting distance. We can actually see it maybe next year, maybe 2 years, but it's like getting closer and closer. How do you see that? Again, you've already said, I don't care if it doesn't happen 2030, but realistically, what are you actually seeing?
Well, so I started investing in 2016, and I really came up with my Robotaxi thesis in 2019 or 2020. I think it was 2019, after Autonomy Day. And I don't think I came up with the Optimus stuff until the last few years.
Right.
When we started seeing Optimus, I started thinking about it more. All those things are good. And I think that the other critical thing to understand about it is it's not just that Tesla's going to deliver Robotaxi and Tesla's going to deliver Optimus. It's that there's really no meaningful competition out there for Tesla and Robotaxi and Optimus.
Yeah.
Because they combine far more advanced real-world AI than anybody else and accelerating the lead, right? Nobody really has any meaningful real-world AI being developed at all that I've seen. So Tesla, does anybody else have 1 million robots out there, 100,000 robots out there, 10,000 robots out there collecting data? Tesla has 7 million robots out there collecting data for generating real world AI and the supercomputer clusters, and then the manufacturing ability to manufacture these things at scale. I don't see anybody else combining that. And I just want to mention there's a lot of things that Tesla's doing that when you put it all together, it accelerates those advantages, like having a lithium refinery, having a cathode production facility, making your own batteries, the logistics operations that Tesla has developed, the internal corporate operating system software to manage your company more efficiently. There's so many these are all like maybe small advantages. They're not insignificant, but small. Like this might be a 5% advantage over everybody else. This might be a 5% advantage over everybody else. But when you add it all up, now you've got all these other advantages over everybody else. So I think that and there's things we don't even know about that they have advantages on. So, they're talking about like the dry electrode 4680. Like as far as I know, no one else in the world is making dry electrode batteries.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer. That's a massive game changer. If you go back to battery and you see how much less floor space you need to make your batteries, how much quicker you can make your batteries, how much lower cost your batteries are if you can go to dry electrode. And I didn't Did you hear it in the call? I didn't hear it in the call. They heard that they made their first pre-production Cybertruck with dry electrode 4680.
It's already in it's actually
didn't
in a
understand,
production.
like, why would the manufacture of a dry electrode 4680 be different than a wet electrode 4680? It's the same 46 millimeter by 80. Is there something different about Cybertruck with dry electrode batteries that we don't know? That was different.
No, I think what they're just saying is that we've solved 4680 battery dry electrode, and we've now actually shown it by putting it into an actual production car vehicle. It's happening. And so it's going to be increasing Q4.
But to me, like, you would have the same manufacturing line, you would have the same process, and you would just be putting different battery packs in it. And I almost got the feeling like, no, dry electrode batteries actually are materially different in some way. Maybe you need fewer cells.
Yeah.
Maybe they're more energy dense and you need fewer cells.
Yeah.
And so instead of having 1,300 cells, you have 1,100 cells. So the structure of the battery pack is actually, the battery pack itself is different. That might be true. And I think he said they expect to be manufacturing dry electrode 4680 in fairly high volume by the end of this year.
Yeah, Q4. It's awesome. And so, what you just said makes a lot of sense, by the way. So Tesla makes their own batteries and they make their own chips. And guess what? Every robot needs a battery and they need the chip. Every car needs a battery and a chip. And so when you're talking about other competitive bots out there, they will have to go and buy NVIDIA chips, and they will have to go and buy BYD batteries or somebody's batteries to power it. And then those are the 5%, and maybe more, right? Because the inference chip that's used in the car, in the bot, Tesla has optimized it for low power wattage, fast compute, that kind of thing. That they said, Elon's been saying this a number of times, NVIDIA can't beat their inference chips. So I wanted to ask you then, so you're very bullish, and you've, rightly so, and because we're both bulls, we're pretty excited at this point. What red flag would make you stop investing in Tesla or lower your investment in Tesla?
The thing that would, there's always the unknowns, right? From everything that I see out there, I suppose if Elon is a key man risk. Mm-hmm. If something happened to Elon, then I would be concerned. I think he probably has more protection. He clearly has better protection than any presidential candidate other than the incumbent.
Just quickly, you actually did, when we were worried about him getting his share 2018, you pulled off 20% of your shares because you were concerned about that scenario. And then you reinvested. That's an example.
The concern there was not that he wouldn't get his compensation. The concern is that a no vote would be a vote of no confidence from the shareholders, and that Elon would react not to not getting his compensation, but to not having the support of the shareholders, and leave the company. So yeah, I don't think there's any. The shareholder vote was so positive that I think he's with the company now. It's key man risk. I think that people often ask me, Warren, when would you sell your Tesla stock? And when the price of the stock is higher than I think it's worth. And I don't, right now, if the stock was, we're at like $200 a share or something like that, right? If the stock was $1,000 a share, I wouldn't sell. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have, where I see the value of the stock going is I see another, would I sell a few shares in order to pay for something at some point? I'm going to have to sell some, at some point, maybe I'll have to sell some stock to pay for something. But I think I'm good for a while. But I think that if the stock went to $10,000 a share next week, well, then I'd have to think about selling some, right? Sure. But at $1,000 a share, I'm not selling.
That's a different question, though. Let's stick with the red flag first. Yeah. So what are the red flags? You said key man risk. Is that the only one?
It's a good question.
And if Elon did leave today, okay.
No, political. If there was a severe political change where let's say the United States and China jointly decided to ban self-driving cars. Yeah. They decided we're concerned about the impact of this real world AI stuff on our drivers and our labor markets, and we've decided not to allow this. Mm-hmm. Right, which China's not going to do.
Well, it could be warfare,
You
right? It
ask
could
me
be
about
like,
the United States.
yeah.
Could I see I'm sorry to be partisan, but I'll say if one of the parties wins the election, and you can guess which one I'm thinking about, I could see them saying, you know what I'm talking about. Our union supporters don't like the idea of this competitive labor, this competition for their labor. I could totally see. I unfortunately now that would not change my long-term outlook because the United States is only one of the countries that matter. I could see Europe doing it too. I mean, I think the political situation is so dangerous with the EU making war on X, with Brazil going after X, with Australia going after X, and I have a very, very dim view of politicians, not just in the United States. And if the political class decides that Elon is the enemy and they decide to make war on Elon, then Tesla is an obvious target. And like, you say, well, they need SpaceX to deliver payloads to space. Like, they don't care about humanity. I'm very, very dark on politicians. They do not care about the benefit, about the welfare of their constituents. They care about their own power, and they would happily cut the size of their economy in half in order to maintain their power. I mean, look at Kim Jong-un in North Korea. He could make life better for his population like that, and he doesn't. Why? Because he needs to maintain power. And what I see with the behavior of, I don't think the R party is the red party is that much better than the blue party. But right now, to me, it's like the blue party would destroy the global population in order to maintain. They would rather have a nuclear war than let the orange man be president. I mean, I'm looking at what's happening. Like, is Iran about to get a nuclear weapon, and is Israel about to nuke Iran before they get a nuclear weapon? And is anybody awake in the White House who's aware of this potential issue and doing anything about it? Because I don't,
Okay.
But like, let's say global thermonuclear war isn't really going to change my investment position, because at that point, investment doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do think political attacks on Elon escalating are a threat. But I still don't see where I'm putting my money. That's a better bet, right? Like, where if I sell Tesla stock, where am I putting my money? Am I holding dollars when I think the dollar might blow up? Am I buying Bitcoin when I think China and America decide to make war on Bitcoin? Like, I don't know what's the better choice, because you have to think about that. You say it like it's a red flag, like what would make you sell Tesla? Like, well, what am I doing with the money when I sell the stock?
Yeah.
And I don't, like, you have to tell me there's some better alternative for what I'm doing with the stock, with the money. And I don't see that.
Yeah. And they'll have their own red flags. Okay. I mean, I just, because, whenever you speak to somebody who's an Uber bull, it's good to find out what's your level, like what's going on, what's happening. For me, the other issue for me would be if I see Tesla no longer innovating and no longer executing, then I would, and again, there's levels, right? You can reduce your exposure. You don't have to necessarily cut everything, but you start deciding, what are you seeing here? That's what, took me a while for, I stayed with Apple for a long time, even after Steve Jobs left, and then pulled out when I stopped seeing them innovate and execute. And I put it into Tesla. I was already investing in Tesla before that, but I just started to move because of that. Now, last several years, I made the wrong decision, you could say, because Tesla stock fell. But again, I have the same time frame as you, so it's not as I don't try to think of these things and go, that's okay. That matters.
No, I think your point is a really good one. If I thought Tesla stopped innovating, if I thought Tesla became infected with the DEI woke mind virus,
as
one example, sure.
Yeah, if I, which is why I think Tesla's going to win the AI war, is because they're the only one that is not letting political correctness infect their AI. And I should say, I'm sorry for going off a little bit on this, but if you're doing large language models and you're training on human generated text, I just had this conversation with a couple of people, and it sort of woke this up in me. It's not like something I brilliantly saw 10 years ago or whatever. I literally came up with this a few weeks ago, and maybe I'll change my mind. But if you're training your AI on human generated data, then your AI, there's some sort of upper limit on how intelligent your AI can be, because you can't get much smarter than human. Yeah. You might get smarter than the average human. You might get smarter by combining the intelligence of a variety of humans, but there's some sort of limitation. Yeah. But if you train your AI on objective real world data, and you form models about the real world, and then you train your models on understanding the real world, you're no longer bound by human subjective, because, keep in mind, AI, Tesla's FSD is still training on how do the best drivers drive in this situation.
Right. Yeah.
So when you get to the point where, when you get to the point where you're like, okay, we're now as good as any human, and now we have a path because we have this objective data, and now we can say, okay, what are our results operating on this objective data? What are our objective results of our actions? I think there's a path for real world AI to become smarter than human, because there's an objective source of data. If you're just using AI to generate more text to train your data, there's a tautology there. Yeah. So I think that's another reason why Tesla's going to win that race. Yeah. And I just don't see anybody else who's on that path. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on in OpenAI.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but we don't know what's going on in OpenAI. We don't know what's going on in these other companies. I think that other companies have figured out objective real world data is valuable. But I just think Tesla already has the path to get the real world data that nobody else has access to. And of course, XAI will get access to that data, preferred access to that real world data where others won't.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why Elon says truth seeking, because if you're truth seeking AI, then you can go past the human's level of intelligence. It's interesting how he thinks of things, and so far, every time he says something, it seems to have panned out correctly. So it's cool. Thank you so much, Warren. Appreciate your way of thinking. You have your own you have your own different approach. You definitely do think of things differently than everyone else. I've said this every time I've had a conversation with you. That's why I appreciate it.
I always feel like I'm a Stephen Mark Ryan clone. I don't feel I'm that different from Stephen.
I get you. You both have the same
He's
objective.
My identical twin cousin.
That's kind of true, actually, when I think about that. That's interesting. Thank you so much, Warren. Appreciate you. Follow him on his YouTube channel. And of course, you can see his X account, WR4NYGov. There's a whole story what that is. If Elon follows him, maybe you should follow him too. Don't know why I followed you. See you soon. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.